I have to change that CV. I think it's a bit embarrassing. I don't know if I can live up to the reputation I may have set myself, let alone anyone else. I'm of course delighted to have been invited here today to speak to you all on the issue of overcoming racial barriers and achieving full potentials. I'm delighted that Dr. Vincent extended this invitation to me. I'm obviously flattered to have been invited. This is probably the second or third time I've been invited to the AGPI's functions to speak on some level. I sometimes wonder what it is about me that Dr. Vincent sees that he sort of can see in me that I could be narrowing such a complex subject into a 6-minute talk. So hopefully I can live up to the expectations of Dr. Vincent and others here in my abilities in being able to narrow such a complex subject into a 6-minute discussion, or at least a 6-minute talk. My particular topic, or what I've been given the duty to address you on, is obviously the role of civil society organisations in the elimination or the overcoming of racial barriers. I guess when Dr. Vincent raised this with me, I sort of scratched my head and said, well, what are civil service, or what are civil society organisations? Because it was a term that was sort of a little bit new to me, but when I sort of did what everyone does these days, is a Google search on this, there was tons of information on it. I picked up I suppose a definition of what a civil society organisation is, and I think my understanding of it is that it covers a wide range of citizens' associations that exist in virtually all countries to provide benefits, services or political influence to specific groups within society. It also includes business forums, faith-based associations, labour unions, local community groups, non-governmental organisations, philanthropic organisations, think tanks, amongst others, apparently. Usually excluded, obviously government is not included in that, government agencies, but also individual businesses, political parties and the media. I take some issue with individual businesses because I think they can have some influence as well outside your usual sort of government agencies and legislators. Obviously there's a wide, as I've already indicated, there's a wide degree of debate, discussion amongst academics, as there always is on these topics. But these civil society organisations seem to exist at both an international level as well as a national level. But I sort of want to try and focus my attentions here today to the place that we're all in, and that is Ireland. As many of you know, the Irish Constitution, which is the document from which all law in this country evolves, or at least comes from, enshrines the concept of equality before the law. And you know, I take this to mean both in a formal sense, but also in a substantive sense. And I was heartened, I suppose, and in some ways disheartened to hear what our introductory speaker had to say. It's on a personal level that I find it, as well as a professional level, I find it very disappointing to hear that the acts that were spoken of in our introductory comments continue to happen. It obviously is a failure of the system that exists here, and I will say not just here, with a perspective from Australia as well. It's a failure of the system there, that acts of racism and abuse and assaults and racial violence still occur. It's no more acceptable or less acceptable here or in Australia. And I would take some, I suppose, in a way, being a member of profession of lawyers, I would have to take some personal responsibility, because obviously there are mechanisms in this country for protection of rights of people against all forms of racial discrimination. And if, for some reason, there is a lack of enforcement of those rights for people. We need to start taking, as a profession, start taking a good look at ourselves and why people are not coming forward. It means that in some ways there must be a lack of confidence in the system, and it means the legal profession, the judges, the courts, it means all arms of the government. And I know our friendly guard will probably address some of those issues as well. And obviously the legal profession will often work in with the Gardaí on issues as well. So we as a profession need to sort of start taking a bit of an inward look as well as an outward look to find out why people aren't coming forward to enforce their rights. And that there are rights that do exist there. They're there in law. Whether they're there in substance, well, that's another issue altogether. As I said, I'm focusing on this issue of, and there is a huge amount of commentary, literature, whatever you want to call it, on the issue of racism. But I want to focus on what I think are the really fundamental concepts that sort of, or what I believe is something that really should be focused on when we're talking about racism, and that is the issue of equality. Fundamentally, what we're talking about the issue of equality. Equality, as far as I'm concerned, is both formal equality and a substantial equality. Formal equality we all are familiar with. So if you're equal to me, I'm equal to you. We all understand that. And I think part of the problem in eliminating discrimination is that we've all gotten to the stage where we can say, yes, of course you're equal to me. Of course you're equal to me. You're a human being, you're equal to me. But what that breeds, I find, that once people get their head around that breeds is not an understanding or recognition that there are differences, and that indifferences, necessarily treating somebody as simply on a formally equal level, can also perpetrate racism and prejudice and can put people at disadvantage. So the issue of substantial equality, I think, is a much more complex one. I think that's why people have difficulty with it. It means that, in essence, I think, and again, go into the legalities of what substantial equality means and how it's implemented in law or how it should be implemented in law. But in essence, to me, substantial equality means providing equality of opportunity, not just treating you as an equal, providing real equality of opportunity. And I mean in every facet of our lives, whether it extends to our early education, education to third level institutions, college, vocational education, it extends to health, it extends to access to the legal system, it extends to all of those facets of life. Unfortunately, in Ireland, as in other countries throughout the world, there is domestic legislation outlawing all forms of racial discrimination based on the International Covenant on the Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination, which you'll all be familiar with. Obviously, I think, despite that existing, despite the legislation existing, despite the fact that the Irish Constitution enshrines the whole concept of equality before the law, racism still exists. We have to really do a bit of soul searching and ask ourselves why, given that the covenant on elimination of all forms of racial discrimination has now been in existence for 50 years or more. It's a long time. Between those times we've put, what developments we've had? We've developed the internet where people can talk to each other throughout the entirety of the world. And more recent times we've put effectively a Toyota Prius on the moon, or sorry, on Mars. I mean, you can do that, but you cannot address the issue of the simple issues down here on planet Earth. That is the elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. Where do I suppose, getting back to the crux of the legislation, how can they have a role in ensuring the elimination of all forms of racial discrimination? Well, I think really their focus has to be on the issue of substantial equality, rather than the issue of formal equality. Formal equality, it's been addressed, the government has legislation in place, you know, those rights are there, they can be enforced. Despite some of the caveats that I had put on reasons why that people aren't enforcing those rights, there is law there to protect people. Hopefully the courts will follow it through. But I think civil society organisations have a fundamental and valuable role in ensuring things like proper access, and I mean equal access, substantial access to education opportunities, employment opportunities, vocational opportunities, you know, and to allow people to have and I mean people in the general sense, as well as the specific sense, to have a full and unfettered participation in our society. And I think it's even more fundamental now in these times, because, you know, what tends to happen in worse off economic times, as we all know, is that the more vulnerable get left behind, and those opportunities divvied up amongst the more privileged rather than the less privileged, if you get what I mean. I think necessarily that government has to engage with all civil society organisations in a meaningful way to ensure that not only is equality before the law a very nice and wonderful concept, but it's also a reality. And I think that's what we're missing at the moment. I think what we're missing is that whilst we have wonderful policies in place, we have lovely legislations, we have a situation where I think in most workplaces these days, if you utter racial or sexist or homophobic comments, it's seen as gross misconduct and you should be dismissed from your employment. Well, that's all fine and wonderful, and of course that should be the case. But I think these things are sometimes, I would describe as window dressing, lip service to the real concept of equality. And there has to be not just words, not just nice, warm and fuzzy feelings, but I think there has to be some real engagement with civil society organisations, consultation to ensure the substance of those rights is enjoyed by all. So I suppose in summary, and hopefully I've addressed the topic squarely, and it's always a problem when you give a lawyer 6 minutes, they'll take 60, you know. They should have a little red light on them. My firm belief is that not only should people have formal equality, but they should also have substantial equality, no matter what walk of life they come from. And that means being able to enjoy those rights and enjoy them in a meaningful way, not simply in a formal sense. And that I believe that the role of civil society organisations is fundamental, in partnership, of course, with government, to implement these policies, not just to have the policies, but to implement them and to act on them. and I'd be happy to take any questions from you.